Guys, as I said in my first video that this Russian formalism is associated with form and technical devices. Now come to the point that how we can bring some changes. This is $1 million question, that how we should we will know that there is a difference between the language of prose and poetry. The difference between the language which we are using in common speech and the language which is used in poetic creation or in literature. Now for this, this school of critics said many things to how we can bring changes. For example, we can transform the simple language to change in poetic language. We can reconstruct an ordinary language into poetic language. We can even deform this. Also we can deform this ordinary language into poetic language or literary language. We can we can by the help of this transformation, we can put another word, we can replace another word from which is used in common languages, and then we can bring some changes, and then it will be known as the poetic language or the literary language. So there are many kinds of transformation from ordinary language to literary language. This Russian formalists, they, as they say that because of these all things we can bring changes. Now what will happen when we will bring some change in? For example, as I said that in uh, marriage day, both bride and bridegroom should feel that I am a bride and I am a bridegroom. Likewise, in literature also, literature should feel that see, there is an author who has written me or who has made me. Okay, so this the language which we are using in common language, we cannot use the same language in literature also, because in this manner there will be chaotic situation between these two. The literatures, literature is famous, or they distinguish from ordinary language because of its literariness, and this literariness should not be vanished. you know this is very important point, that this literariness is very important in this Russian formalism. Why? Because if both will be the same, the language of this common speech and the language of this literature, if both will be the same, then there should not be any special in literature. Okay, if we will eat as we eat in general day, and the same thing if we will eat in festivals also, then there is no difference between the festival and a common day. That's why in literature, the language should be different. It should be pull apart from the language which we are using in general speech or in common speech or in communication. So that's why, because by transforming, transporting, transformation, reconstruction, or after that deform, by the help of this deform, or by putting another words from a particular word, because by the help of these all things we can bring some changes into ordinary language, and then we will make it uh, this poetic language or literary language. So this is important. A language of literature is special. It is it is something special. Writers, as we if we can take some example, for example, like the Westland and the metaphysical poets, they were not a foolish man that they use the language which is different from the prosaic language. They are very highly intelligent, and what happens in general, that if we read some complex language in literary text, then the writers are not writing this complex words or complex lines that the readers could not understand these all things, but they write it because that we should think over the poetry, and in this thinking process we will get more things than if we will read the common language. That's why Russian formalists laid emphasis on this form, and they said that no, there should be difference between the language of literature and the language of poet, this common speech. Now to understand you, you, or to convey you these whatever I have said right till now, I have taken so many examples from poems also, or literature also. The very first example is that, and I hope that you all of you all have go through this poem, that is this poem is Retreat, written by Henry Vaughan. If we will if we see that the first line of this poem, here the poet says that, happy those early days when I signed in my angel infancy. The very simple meaning, if we will take the very simple language, or if we will divide this two line into literary language and poetic language, then the simple meaning is simple, the very that we communicate in general life, that my childhood was very bright. The simple meaning of these two line is, my childhood was very bright. But Henry Vaughan here, makes difference, and that's why he, instead of saying that my childhood was very bright, because if we will say that in rhyming, that my childhood was very bright. No, this is prosaic language. This is not the language which should be used in poetry or in literature. That's why he's saying that, happy those early days when I signed my when signed in my angel infancy. The meaning is same, that my childhood was very bright. Okay, but instead of knowing these all things, Henry Vaughan is making difference. So this is the difference between the language of poetry and the language which we use in common speech. And this should be there, because when this will be there, then we will think over it, and we will get more than we get in another way. So now take another example, that in the same poem, in last, the poet says that, and when this dust falls to the urn, this line, the simple meaning of this line is that, when my body will die. Okay, but instead of writing this the simple meaning, or the simple in simple language, that when my body will die, the writer is writing here that, no, when this dust falls to the earth. It means that he's he's comparing his body to dust, and this die refers to the biblical reference, that is, you are an urn, when this dust falls to the earth. So you are we can find that there is a difference between the language of literature and the language of common speech. Now we can take third example also, in Gifts of God, this poem written by this George Herbert. In this poem, there is the second stanza. I am reading the second stanza of the Gifts of God. So strength first made a way, then beauty flowed, then wisdom, honor, pleasure. When almost all was out, God made a stay, perceiving that alone of all his treasure rest in the bottom lay. If we will go through the simple meaning of this stanza, then the simple meaning is that the God, capital G, bestowed strength, beauty, wisdom, honor, pleasure, okay, to man respectively, but he did not bestowed rest to them. This is the general meaning, or the simple meaning, that the God bestowed strength, beauty, wisdom, honor, and pleasure to man respectively, but he did not bestow rest to them. But instead of saying this emotion in simple language, the poet George Herbert making some difference, by transforming the simple language, by deforming, or by by reconstructing it. Okay, and he's saying like this, that you can read in the second stanza of the Gifts of God. So this is the difference, between the common language and literary language. And that's why I said that literature should feel that, no, I am something different. Something should be there that can make difference in between this literary language and common language. And this is the the gem of this Russian formalism, that in this school of criticism, it is making the critics of this school is making difference between these two. Still, if you have not understood, then I can bring some more example. I think that you all of have seen this movie Three Idiot. And in one scene, when the teacher asks to his students that what is the definition of a machine, on that time, Amir Khan said that anything which reduces human effort, that can be called as machine. But the teacher was not happy, and after that, the silencer did the definition of this machine. uh, After that, something happened, and Amir Khan is out of the class. But after that, when he re-entered in the classroom, the teacher asked that, did you not go? But why did you not go? Then Amir Khan replies in a big sentence, this in English. And after that, when the teacher asks to Amir Khan that, what do you want to say, then he replies that, sir, books, sir, books, books. So what Amir Khan has said in that speech, it is the meaning of that whole speech is only books, means he was saying about book. So by saying in simple language,